The mayor pointed out in 2004 that Nebraska received over $14 per capita in Homeland Security funding. And at that time, New York State was getting about $4 per capita. And what we have seen, and I want to thank the great work of Congressman King, who pointed out cuts, if you remember, nearly a year ago to Homeland Security transportation funding, and he was working with the mayor at that time to point out those cuts. And here we are now, and we have Republicans who have spearheaded cuts in Washington, D.C. to show that this is really bipartisan. We have a federal Department of Homeland Security that in many instances, unfortunately, has become a cash purveyor of pork and projects to states and cities at much lower and less security risk than New York City and its suburbs. And unfortunately, whether it be we just saw with the killing of Osama bin Laden, or the fact that just a week back there was, Senator Golden, thank you for joining us, just a week back the planned attacks against New York City synagogues and the Empire State Building. The threat to our homeland security of terrorism doesn't end with the death of Osama bin Laden, and the partisanship on other issues we have seen be overcome on homeland security. The way that these grants are being laid out and the fact that New York City is not receiving the funding that we deserve, and the way that the Department of Homeland Security at federal level really has become a pork purveyor really represents a clear threat to our overall national security, because it's increasingly likely that a small group of well-financed individuals are going to be able to exact inordinate damage upon the United States of America. And while an attack in Kansas to Nebraska would be absolutely horrific, the reality is that we live in a state that's terrorist target number one. And outside of Jerusalem, on many days, New York City even goes beyond that in being a terrorist target. And it was 19 men with box cutters, 19 thugs with box cutters that changed our global history. And we have got to live with that reality every single day. Unfortunately, it seems like there are some of those in Washington, D.C. who have forgotten that reality. So I'm going to open it up to the mayor, and I thank him for being here on this critically important issue. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Senator Ball. I think he couldn't be more right on this, and his leadership is crucial. And I wanted to say thank you also to Bill Larkin and to David Carlucci and Marty Golden, my senator. In 1993, there was a bomb that went off in the basement garage of one of the World Trade Center towers, and there were a number of people killed. But then there we are. You go ahead to September 11th, 10 years ago, 9¾ years ago, and we hadn't learned anything. We have got to remember that our freedoms are being threatened all the time. New York is the iconic symbol of the United States around the world for those people who don't like the fact that we are in charge of our own destiny and we have the right to say what we want to say and the right to be who we want to be. And if we let our guard down, and guard costs money, then unfortunately the likelihood of another tragedy taking place in our country and in our city is very high. We have to keep our guard up. If Homeland Security cuts back New York City by $100 million, that will certainly jeopardize our ability with our Lower Manhattan security plan in terms of the resources and the training that we can devote to that. It will reduce our ability to, where we are a gateway, look to see who's trying to bring weapons and explosives into our city. It will mean fewer boots on the ground. $100 million is a lot of money, and as Greg said, we are the symbol, and we are the place where a threat is most likely to turn into reality. When you catch a terrorist, they have a map of New York City in their pocket, not a map of any place else. Now, I understand there are other big cities, and Homeland Security has responsibilities for the whole country, but the disproportionate cut to New York just doesn't make any sense if your objective is to keep this country as safe as you possibly can. If your objective is a political one, then I understand why you would spread it more fairly. But I think the security of this country is just too important to let politics play into it. And I wanted to also second Senator Ball's comments about Pete King. Pete King has been one of those who's really stood up for New York and for America. This is not a New York issue. This is a national issue, but New York is the place in the country the most threatened. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just follow up quickly, and then I'll introduce some of the other senators who would like to speak. You know, we had hearings in New York City, Homeland Security hearings in New York City, and at that time, we brought some issues out, whether it be the JFK Air Train, Port Authority Bus Terminal, George Washington Bridge, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, other critical transportation and communications infrastructure. And some of the questions that went back and forth, I know that Newsday brought it out, was, is this a union issue or is this a management issue? The reality is that if the federal government, it really shouldn't be that. It's got to always be about our homeland security and making the protection of New York City a federal priority. And when the federal government walks in there with a chainsaw and an axe instead of a scalpel, which is exactly what they have done, they will force this to become a union versus management issue. Because without the proper funding, we are leaving our homeland security basically up to a wish and a prayer approach that will only bring about devastation in the future. So I think, I really thank all of those who've come to the fore on this. I thank the mayor, I thank Congressman King, Senator Schumer, and others to have a bipartisan approach to this. Senator Larkin?
Thank you very much, Greg. I think the mayor hit it right on the head when the mayor said this is a national issue. You think Podunk, Idaho is someplace where they'd be looking at? I don't think so. But in everything we've found out since the seizure and killing of Osama bin Laden, the intelligence said New York City was still the #1 priority. And I don't understand it. I think, as the mayor said, Peter King and Greg said the same thing. Peter King has done an outstanding job to protect the interest, not just of New York. When we say it, the mayor said it correctly. This is national. When you say, where would you like to tear up the United States? They don't tell you Omaha, Nebraska. They don't tell you Golden, Colorado. They say New York City. And if we're going to let them we're going to stand by and let them just decimate this operation of public safety, then we are neglectful in our duties. And again, as the mayor pointed out so clearly, if this is political, that's one issue. But if it's political, then we ought to all call upon our representatives and saying, hello, when do you stand up for the #1 target in this country, New York City? Mayor, I commend you for everything you've done, and I know that in conjunction with the city, we have West Point, who does a lot of work with you for the city, and they called me and said, what are you people doing? This is our time to stand up and speak. And you know, the media, sometimes you play this, oh, well, it's a little politics. No, it isn't. It's your job to start out there and say, ask every elected official that represents this state and ask everybody up and down the state, are you sticking up for us? And it's your job to make sure they answer us. Thank you very much.
Senator Golden?
Thank you very much. It's always a personal honor to stand with you, Colonel Larkin. And, of course, the Chairman Ball, you're doing an outstanding job, and Senator Colucci, glad to be with you as well. Mr. Mayor, of course, you hit it on the head. Where is the next attack going to be? When you think about it, that Team 6 that went in and took out Osama bin Laden, you know where that Team 6 was just a couple of years ago? Right here in the state of New York. What were they doing? They were training with our state police and with our New York City police. Why? They were training here because they believe, as we believe, that the next attack is here in the state of New York, in the city of New York, and that our men and women in the New York City Police Department and the state need to be up and ready for any type of attack that comes to this great nation. Think about it. Bomb in the shoe, sneaker, bomb in the underwear, bomb on 44th Street. They didn't get the SOP right, the standard operating procedure. How long before they actually get the SOP correct? Ladies and gentlemen, it's right around the corner. And it's not going to be in Podunk, Ohio, or wherever you think it may be. It's going to be right here in the city of New York. Any Republican, any Democrat that stands in the way of funding coming to the state of New York and to the city of New York is doing the wrong thing. This is not about Democrats, it's not about Republican. It's about common sense, it's about doing the right thing. The mayor pointed out about that bombing in 1993. You know what that individual was? He lived at 72nd Street and 5th Avenue in Brooklyn. They lived amongst us before they attacked us. Muhammad Atta, anybody know where he was? He was in Brooklyn as well, several years before the attack. They're here, they live amongst us, and it's only a matter of time. We need that funding. We need that funding to keep our city and our citizenry safe in the city and the state of New York. I commend Commissioner Kelly for the great, great work that he's doing. But we need to be able to supply him the tools. And the tools are the money coming in from Washington, D.C. to help us to keep our city and our state safe. This mayor has worked hard. He has worked hard to keep this city safe. We need to do our part in Washington, D.C. We need to send those hard-earned tax dollars that have gone to Washington, D.C. back to the city of New York to protect the hard-working families that live in this great city and state. And we expect no more. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Carlucci?
Thank you.
Senator Larkin needs to go ahead now.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to stand in solidarity with Mayor Bloomberg, my colleagues in the Senate, and to say, as Senator Golden had stated, that this isn't a Democratic issue, this isn't a Republican issue, this is a common sense issue. And we have to be vigilant in light of what we've seen recently in foiled terror attacks, that we've got to make our priorities known. And we've got to use common sense and make sure that the number one target in this country, in this world, is protected. So I'm here to join with the mayor, with my colleagues in the Senate, the people of New York City, and the people of New York State to say we demand our federal officials to make it a priority to protect and make sure that New York is secure. So with that, I want to thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin.
I know the mayor has to run, so any quick questions? No? Okay, very good. Thank you so much.